Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Knock and Talk podcast. I am one of your hosts, Angie.
And I'm Professor D. And for today's episode, we'll be discussing what is the ideal academic environment, or what is the ideal school, whatever you want to call it. But we'll be focusing on uh, these main subsections of what classes should be taught, what schools should be for, what books should be assigned to be read in schools, or uh, or something that I'm more particularly interested in, the role of the teacher in regards to the style of teaching, and in regards to authority. So, Anshi, what are your surface thoughts on these subtopics?
Well, as I mentioned before this recording, um, basically what comes to mind for me when we talk about when you bring up the subject is mathematics, right? Because the thing is, what I think. Okay, we're talking about ideal schooling, right? Ideal education, right? It's where
Yes.
it's a setting, right, or an activity where the students are engaged. They're not bored. They don't, and they want to be there. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
how we get that, I think, is first essential. We learn essentials, right? The essential things you need to know, as you said, as functioning adults, and as people, as citizens of a certain country, etc. Right? Okay, the essentials, and beyond that, what they are interested in themselves. So that's where they branch off, etc. So, but what inhibits that is the opposite of that, where you things impose things as mandatory when really they should not be, such as mathematics classes. I feel like, of course, in daily life, etc., you need addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. You need those basics, right? But beyond that,
Right.
you really don't because calculators. Smartphones have calculators, right? We have the computer to look up how to do difficult math equations, etc. Or we just plug in the numbers, right? But so since we have those resources, I feel like things like advanced statistics or whatever, like calc, things like that, shouldn't be mandatory as they are. Like I'm in college, right? But
Hmm.
they require me to take one semester of math, which is insane to me. I thought I was done. Like I was hoping I was done, right? When we finished college, I mean, when we finished high school, right? I was hoping we were done with math, but apparently not. And I think that's wasted time, and you know, it's a lot of work that I really don't want to be doing.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially considering the fact that how much technology has advanced in the last 2 decades, last 2 or 3 decades, that are like the standards for what the individual should know as they go through life is a lot less because it's becoming more. It's a regular thing now that we have a computer basically in our in our pockets. So we have all of us have laptops, smartphones, and all that stuff. So it's definitely become a different story in the last 2 or 3 decades. Um, but yeah, throughout our regular day lives, we don't need statistics or calculus. I'd say that's more something that's more so for more specialized careers where, for example, something like an engineer uh, who's dealing with who needs calculus, who are something like economics, where they're using statistics.
Exactly. Or
Well, economics both would use statistics and calculus, but that I think that should be something that's further down the line in the curriculum. Um,
right,
so
I agree. I agree with you. But also, not even considering career, people have interest in mathematics. You know what I'm saying? So they should
yeah,
they should be able to take those courses and enjoy it, right? But I'm one of those people who's just my temperament. I don't like math, right? I don't. Well, I
mhm.
actually used to like math until it got really complicated. You know what I'm saying?
I think that math. Yeah, obviously, there's a lot of people out there who, I mean, like you call math complex and overwhelming. But I think it's anything could be complex or overwhelming. It's just a matter of the application of teaching methods,
True.
uh, which kind of is diving into one of our subtopics is what should the style of teaching be? Now, I feel like we're both a little too used to the very stereotypical lecture where it's the teacher uh, should I say, the professor rattling on for quite a while, and it's very easy to get lost if you don't pay attention for a little bit. And also considering if it's a monotone, very monotone voice, a unenthusiastic attitude, it's especially very easy to not pay attention. So obviously, there's some things to be fixed, and one thing is getting an enthusiastic teacher, and obviously that's a bit hard to ensure that every teacher, in a schooling system is going to be enthusiastic. But what I argue is that um, enthusiasm that when a teacher for certain when a teacher professor knows their subject very well, that is when it gains enthusiasm because I think the teaching because I think the whole entire teaching process is getting like the professor teacher gets enjoyment, gets enthusiastic of the teaching process, and not necessarily just the topic itself. Because if let's say, because I'm sure the teacher would not be so enthusiastic if he had an empty classroom. Well, not literally empty. I mean, like if he had like just only a few students, but if he has like a lot of students who show enthusiasm for the subject too, that's when the teacher would be enthusiastic. Would be enthusiastic. So I think it kind of works in a cycle because then if the teacher is enthusiastic, then the students will be more likely to be enthusiastic too, right?
That's interesting. Positive feedback.
Right. But aside from the tone or like the behavior of the teacher, I think it not only has to be just a teacher lecturing, but it should be a lot more. I think it should be interactive, with especially with topics that are concerned like humanitarian topics, not just like well, obviously it's a bit harder with more technical topics like math. Um, but I think it could be done where students interact with each other to really kind of triangulate what their understanding of the topic of the subject matter in the class, what's being taught in class at that time. Um, but I feel like we have already experienced a little share of that, or should I more accurate to say a downgrade of the student interaction. That you know that we went through some schooling where they tried to enforce some kind of interactivity with the subject matter with other students. But the thing is, the students aren't so enthusiastic about the topic. They're not so enthusiastic about learning, and that goes back to how enthusiastic is the teacher, which is fed by how enthusiastic are the students. So this seems like a cycle that's all tied in together. But it all originates from somewhere, and that I think is the setting, is the physical setting itself. Um, I think it's time to. I think the ideal school shouldn't be too large, and it shouldn't look so despotic. No?
Yeah, that's a fact. They look like prisons.
Yeah. Whoever designs them are. I don't know. It seems like they're really going for that. They're really going for that aesthetic. But aside from that, it's also the shape of the classroom that matters. It's it's the timing of the classes.
Oh yeah,
It's
definitely. Wait, that's a great point. I completely forgot about that. Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah, yeah,
this
no,
is fucking
go.
terrible. Think about this, right? We're in um okay, so a lot of people say you hear it all the time, right? Um oh, high school, now that I think about it, high school was the best time of my life. You know, you guys had it good. You know what I'm talking about? Like our
Right.
parents would say that when we were in high school, or things I still hear it, right?
Hmm.
They say the time flies, and that was the best time. You don't have to, because you live off your parents. You can interact with your friends. We still have to go to school, and things like that, right? But where it's around the prime of your life. You know what I'm saying? You
Right.
you might be in your prime around 20 or whatever, right? But high school and things like that, especially your childhood, that's a very important time, right? Like, so think about this, right? You have this very, you have this period of time, right, since your childhood and then the prime of your life, where it might be the best time of your life in general, right? Because you're young, you're healthy, you can have all this fun with your friends, and you don't have a lot of
Okay.
responsibilities, right? Think about this: you have this very important and fun period of your life. Now, um, we take a lot of that time for every day each week, like 8 hours a day or six or whatever it is, right? During the prime of the day, so from early morning, right, around 8 o'clock to
Yes.
um, to past
I
the
see. I'm
afternoon.
starting to see where you're going with this.
Yeah. So
I
so
think Mr. Foucault would agree with you greatly
who's
that
Foucault?
school. Well, the French philosopher. You never heard of him? That's
No.
there were some memes about him. It's like schools, prison, or something like that.
Oh no, I never heard of him.
You never seen that? Oh, okay. Well, we'll discuss it later. But
Okay.
anyways, go on, go on. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, I think you see my point. So you take this time, as I said, right, a very important time where it's a lot of fun, and you take out the best part of those days. You know what I'm saying? Like I understand, maybe school can't be at night, but it should definitely not be in the, I don't know how the fuck to say it, in the best part of the day, like in the daytime where you should be outside having fun with your friends and things like that. It should definitely
Maybe
not be like
we
6 to 8 hours or whatever.
should
Especially
more
when
accurately say that okay, like maybe more time in between classes, and maybe the class time should be shortened a bit. Which I know it's considering how bureaucratic the educational systems are. It's very hard because it really seems like the already a lot of time is not enough. But again, it's a matter of the style of teaching, as we discussed before, um, and also the idea of what the like our perception of school. Um, think about how okay, try and take it back to our high school when or like any kind of high school where you're being put into this building. Well, in our case, we couldn't exit it, like we weren't allowed to technically.
Hold on a
So
second. Isn't it fucking crazy? This I did not expect freshman year. Isn't it crazy that we did not have like recess? Recess did not exist.
yeah, like, what happened to that?
Isn't that
Like
I
we
thought I
couldn't.
thought that existed. Like how do you take that away from middle school? You have recess every day or whatever, unless it's like below 40 or whatever it was, right? Then no recess.
Right.
But you have recess most of the time, and then we have no recess at all. Why? How does this even work? That's
Yeah,
insane.
it's and oh, I also got another thought. Talking about the physical setting of the school. One thing is recess. I mean, it's universal in any kind of institution, be it work, be it school. Like that's what you always hear, but there's always some kind of break or recess to stop from these probably tedious activities, repetitive activities.
Yeah.
Think about the physical setting of the school. When you have, let's say, a very populated area, or let's say a very not I won't even say very populated area, but an area with poor infrastructure. Now, when I say poor infrastructure, I say um, it just looks like there's nothing to do. All right, take our school, like the school we went to, regular suburban area, which by the way I would consider to be poor infrastructure in that you don't really have any close access to parks because one, they didn't even allow us to leave the school grounds, which I think is despicable. Um, and take a look at what the school grounds were. It was just pavement and the basketball boards. Anything else? I don't think so.
Hmm.
Oh, and the big wall to so if you have a ball, have fun.
Well, we did have
So
the. To be fair, we did have the field and track.
but they didn't let us out during lunch. During lunch,
No, yeah, no, we didn't even have
yeah,
recess
it was
really.
only yeah they didn't. because recess is the time of doing what you want, right?
Yeah.
Not being free from the obligations that the school is supposed to give you. As well, supposedly the service that it gives you, that educates you, which the service is not that is a service that we don't really want. Well, at least in this arrangement. But it's the thing is that it doesn't give students really an environment where they can truly do what they want. What if there was now try to imagine this kind of setting where there was a park right nearby. Uh, well, let's say the park was specifically built right next to the school, right?
Oh.
Because
Mm.
I mean, I think that like that kind of municipal approach should be taken. That the schools that necessarily implies that there's going to be students in there who are going on recess. What if there was a park right nearby? Let's say with all types of various activities, places to rest. Maybe towards the summer, you can even sit under the shade of a tree. Kind of escape, maybe read a book. That kind of that kind of approach to giving the children, or not necessarily children, students, more freedom to do in that time period recess. I think would greatly impact their perception of school because. I mean, my perception of school when we're kind of huddled into here, there, and then here. You can't leave there. You need a pass. You need permission to go here. Oh, you can't go there. It's it completely wrecks because school we associate with learning. When all whole our perception of being inside a building is that there are a bunch of obligations, restrictions, necessary permissions. What is our percent? What happens to our association with the learning experience? It becomes completely toppled with this this despotic uh, this despotic dystopian perception of it, and I think that's what we need to change. That I think that type of setting where we're faced with so many different and what we deem unnecessary obligations, restrictions, and necessary permissions and all that business really comes comes with standardization and centralization. I think that if we had smaller schools um, that had a more that and I think smaller schools would foster more personal interactions between the staff. I think and less standardization. I think that's what will deliver really a educational experience, which includes not just necessarily education, but also stuff like recess. I think that's what will deliver to the students a more personalized experience. And when we say personalized, we mean something that is more attuned to their desires,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And it
Exactly.
doesn't restrict and it doesn't contradict what the educational system wants, right? Because there's no harm in, let's say, the kid going out to the park during recess and just reading a book under the shade of a tree, right? There's no harm in that. But look at the setting we face now, where there's thousands of kids in one specific place. Okay, maybe not in the case of our schools, but there's some way bigger schools out there where that have thousands of kids. I mean, it's a lot harder. So they have to enforce standards. They have to have so many obligations and restrictions. But guess what? That school falls under the same district as the smaller school that we go to. So we are faced with this seemingly more unnecessary system of rules. So I guess you can call that the smaller school that we went to. We kind of saw this. We kind of saw the as the smaller the school was, the less necessary all these rules were, because we know that we wouldn't go. It wouldn't be a huge crowd toppling the streets. It would just be quiet. Students would go to maybe some place we wanted to eat, some park we wanted to visit in the roughly 45 minutes of time we had. But even then, just the standard, all the standardization was just too stubborn. The enforcement of standards was just too stubborn.
Hmm.
So we really felt that the sense of it being unnecessary. Okay, my bad for the monologue, but I'm sure there were some logical hiccups there, but you get my point.
No, yeah, yeah.
I think
No, you
I
said well.
think the main enemy. I think the main enemies that we're facing right now is really just centralization, the standardization. Remove those and we would have a school setting that, well, like a physical setting for the school that would exude, that would bring enthusiasm to this cycle that I was talking about before between the teacher and the students, because the students, they wouldn't face the same stress of wouldn't have these same negative associations, and I think the learning experience would be a lot more about learning rather than just trying to force yourself through curriculum. Both the teacher and the students trying just having this sense like they're forcing themselves through curriculum.
Right, I agree. Um, I really like this point you made with the park. Like, I was just thinking about. I never thought about that. If what if like next to each school? I was just thinking about our school. Right? What if next to our school they just had like a park? Like they built it because the school is right there and it's on the same place. You know what I'm saying? It's like in the
Right.
backyard. That'd be really
It's
cool.
just that the city planners didn't really go that far.
Yeah, I want. That's like a really great idea. I feel like because if I'm not mistaken, aren't there like benefits to being out in nature, like
Oh, of
cognitive
course.
benefits and things like that? And if it's a peaceful setting, like a nice park that's kind of big or whatever, that people can go around in, chill, like you said, read a book or something like that under a tree, whatever. That peaceful environment could be a great like resting period in between classes. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
That'd
right.
be cool.
It'll be kind of a cool down from
It's like on a
learning.
college campus
Right,
because we kind of
exactly.
have that there, but
See, college. That's the good thing about college. They have some stuff figured out, so it's a bit better in some aspects. But the problem with the city planning, like the case in our school, where there were no parks nearby, and it was just those rectangular grids of suburbia, is that, and plus, really, the only places that we are meant to walk on is those little slits that we call the sidewalks.
hmm,
We shouldn't be on the road where the cars are zooming by, right? So it has really a negative effect on how the person views public space, when really the only destinations that we can go to is either the strip mall, the pathetic looking strip malls, or another pathetic strip mall, right? Or the park that's really far away. And by park, I just mean concrete pavement with basketball boards too. Um, but by park, I mean like it can't. It has to be a well thought out park. That's another problem. That the government really has to figure out what makes a good park. It
hmm.
can't just it has to, like, the space has to be defined by something, right? The problem is that they're just too bland. Like I don't know, maybe that's just my personal opinion, and I mean, it probably is, but like it has to have some aspect of nature present. It has to be some aspect of interaction, right? And it has to be arranged well too, to give certain feelings of maybe coziness, if it be somewhere nearby a school, right?
Yeah, definitely. These are great ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this a lot more, but I'd have to research more. I have to
Yeah, yeah.
find out all the technical terms. I'm just really going off my intuition here.
Right. Um, um, the this just came to mind. Like this is pretty off topic, but um, speaking of parks and things like that in nature, right? So I heard this one time, like, and I'm sure it doesn't work for all instances of depression, right? But I heard that some people, right, when they're really depressed or whatever, when I don't even know if it's some people or sometimes it's some types of depression. I don't know what it is, right? But I heard that sometimes walking barefoot on grass, on like a grass thing, will like relieve some symptoms of depression. You know what I'm saying? Have you ever heard that?
No, I never heard of that. I'm sure. I don't know.
That's kind of crazy because if
Very,
you think about it, it could be like an evolutionary thing where, like, if you're inside all the time, you're going to be feeling depressed. So once you go outside and your body feels that response,
well,
that
yeah,
stimulus, like the grass on your feet because you went
yeah.
outside.
I think it's not necessarily the grass doing it. I think it's just a change of setting. When you sense a
Oh,
change of setting, when you sense a new sensation, let's say the grass.
wait, but
Um,
no, I agree with you. I agree with you totally on that, 100%. But I have heard anecdotally, I don't see it's anecdote, but I don't know.
mhm.
But anecdotally, I've heard like there was this woman, and like she was just saying like she would get really depressed, and it's not even the change of scenery. She just had to go outside into her backyard a little bit and just walk around for a couple minutes, and she would feel much better. You know what
So
I'm saying?
that was just her. I think that's just like her unique thing that she found out that like that change of setting, caused her to feel less depressed or whatever, like no depression. I don't know,
All
but
right, yeah, good point.
it made her feel better. We'll say that. Um, but yeah, I think it's more of a correlate. I don't think it's necessarily grass. But I think stagnancy is bad in all aspects. Because there's always some kind of perfect amount of something that our body desires or our minds desire that works well for us. I mean, I can take it back to salt, sugar, and fat. I was reading a while back that that if you like, you know how when you eat too much of something, eventually you don't like it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Well, and that's a trick your brain does. Your brain does on you, because by evolution, when you like it wants you to eat a diversity. It wants you to eat a lot of wide range of nutrients, wide range of a wide range of uh, vitamins, right? So when you eat the same thing, you're getting the same variation of vitamins and nutrients, and maybe proteins, other stuff. So when your brain does a trick on you and it makes you not like that, not like it, but like it less, you would be more likely to eat another variety of foods. So that would more likely deliver you a different range or a wider range uh, of goodies. So so we see that stagnancy, where like let's say being too constant, eating the same thing over and over. Eventually, we get tired of it. So we go into other things and we get a different range of stuff. So yeah, I feel like stagnancy applies to all different parts of our biology and psychology.
yeah. That's interesting with the like how you get sick of a certain food. Like
Mhm.
I didn't know the reason behind that. That makes a lot of sense. Like you would go eat different things, but
Yeah.
anyway, I looked it up. The thing is called earthing. It's a lot of it's when you go walk around barefoot when you're feeling
Mhm.
sad.
Oh, okay,
Or
so specifically being barefoot, huh?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It's called earthing.
Who would
It's
think?
yeah. I don't know. I can't. I'm looking it up for like a minute here, so I don't know. I haven't seen any studies, but there are a ton of articles. Um, it's like they're like if you're depressed, spend time in grass. There you go. Yeah, things like that. And there was one where it was like recommending just walking around barefoot when feeling depressed. But I don't know. It was very interesting. It's called ground. It's called
Well, to
earthing.
our viewers, if you're ever feeling sad or if you're depressed, well, you know what to do now. Go outside, take off your shoes and socks, and just go walk around for a bit.
I'm sure it definitely has to do with, like you say, a change of scenery there. That's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
one component. So that's definitely good for people.
Oh, yeah, I should probably dive into the other
Oh wait,
some topics.
wait. First of all, since you brought up salt, sugar, and fat, though, first of all, follow Friendly Bookshelf.
Yes, yes, these friendly bookshelf. They're well, okay, yeah, I'm friendly bookshelf, but the parts of the book, salt, sugar, fat that I keep talking about, they're getting posted. I posted sugar today, the sugar portion. Posting the fat portion of the book tomorrow. and the salt should be the day after that salt portion.
That's hype.
Day
I'm
after that.
I'm ecstatic for those posts. But okay, so
Oh, right,
I don't
right.
really know.
Regarding the subtopic, so um, just like the quick assessment, but what do you think? What classes should be taught? I already said something about I already said a little about the classes about the city history. I think a bit before. But in your opinion, what classes should be taught in school?
Well, the thing is, my answer is going to be overall pretty vague because it's going to have to be, based off what the student is interested in. That's what they should be learning. But as we said earlier, there are certain essentials that we need, and we said this before this recording. Um, things like things that we don't learn, things that we haven't learned that I think we should are things like filing taxes or that whole system. I have no idea how that works.
Hmm.
Um, of course, there are ways to learn it, but I feel like it should be involved in the education system because
Right.
it should help you to. It should
Because if
educate
that
you.
because if all the bureaucratic stuff is because of forces from the government, like such as filing taxes and all that stuff, then the education for it all should also be from the government.
Right, I agree.
I mean, I think they're inflicting this obligation on us. So tell me how to assess this obligation, how to fulfill this obligation. I think it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward logic there. Um, but yeah, that kind of stuff. I think that every student, well, at least in high school, should get some kind of intro to philosophy. Because I think seeing where you are in life, seeing assessing politics or economics, I think it's best to view it objectively. Um, or should I, yeah, objectively to see it that it's not just that's not like whatever you see in society or it's not the constant thing. This is just this is just current this is just current philosophies that we follow to show that life is or should I say society is highly very open to variation. Um, but what books should be assigned to be read? Okay, well, kind of getting more specific into what classes should be taught. Um,
So wait, hold on a
okay,
sec. Hold on a sec. So
yeah, yeah.
a lot of people think this is. I just thought of this because hold on. You say what should be taught literature wise, right? So I know that you hate that Shakespeare is taught.
Yeah, I don't. It's not that I hate. I just think it's overrated. I don't think it
Okay.
did really. I don't really think it teaches kids much. I think Shakespeare is more of entertainment than teaching. I don't know if that's going to offend somebody, but I really do think it's entertainment. It's a story, or I should say, play. Like,
Well, yeah, but at the same time, we learn fiction stories like The Catcher in the Rye, and we have that's just like an example a lot of people read. But like I found that interesting. I thought it was good that we talked about it. It's like a literature discussion. It's the same way. It's like, but no, no, I know what you're saying. Like, because
I guess I have my bias, but I think of the opportunity cost here. Then, in place of Shakespeare, they could have been reading something with a lot more, with a lot more complex subject matter,
yeah,
something more technical or not technical, or should I say something more philosophical than Shakespeare?
or maybe a more
Um,
modern um writer because that's more relevant to us.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
because one thing, okay, the one thing that why is Shakespeare so paraded around? There's this veil of incomprehensibility because it's an archaic use of language. So, and what's society's general perception is that when it's incomprehensible, when it's old, it's smart,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 definitely.
That's the backwards. I mean, I wouldn't say mostly backwards, but most of the time that's what we think. It means it's smart, very smart. Um, so. That's in part why I think it's a bit overrated. Um, because it's very because of this incomprehensibility of a lot of effort is devoted to just deciphering it, which I don't think is really the main focus. The main focus should be on actually assessing concepts, actually juggling around, thinking about clashing of ideas and concepts, not just deciphering the actual concept. Um,
Yeah, I agree. So
so
I think
something more modern, yes, definitely.
yes, I think authors. I think one author that can fit the bill here is Franz Kafka.
Ooh, okay, of
Although,
course. I
although I might,
tell you love
although I might be biased because he's my favorite.
it. No, I mean I've read part of Metamorphosis. I really like it. I
Yes,
really
hype.
like
Yes, Gregor Samsa, bro.
it. Yeah, definitely. That's very a very unique style of writing. I enjoy some parts of it. So yeah, more modern, but in regards to more of a logical reasoning, something more straightforward. I think that we obviously we should introduce that students should be introduced to the classics. It should be introduced to Plato,
Shakespeare.
Aristotle, right? But it shouldn't be like the whole entire class. I think
Yeah, I
really
do agree.
the class should be kind of an eclectic assortment of all types of stuff that takes it, I'd say, chronologically. Um,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah,
Or
it
throughout
kind
the
of
throughout the academic years, go chronologically.
yeah, yeah.
Because 4 years of high school English, you know what I'm saying?
And the other thing I want to address really um, was in general the very concept of philosophy is that philosophy is really like any type of academic discipline that you can think of. It all goes back to the main topic of philosophy. Um, so I think that the flexibility of philosophy, because if you're talking about philosophy, you can talk about biology, you can talk about economics,
Yeah.
yeah, you can talk about physics. It's so flexible. It goes so many ways that I think it's definitely something that should be uh, emphasis place more emphasis on in schooling. I think you can even start in middle school. I don't know about elementary school because I'm just thinking about psychology. Like I don't know how developed how the you know child's cognitive processes yet. So I think middle school is a good time to start, kind of bringing in that really complex critical thinking in. No?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, definitely. I wish we did more critical thinking in middle school or like in those younger years. And by critical thinking, I don't mean really thinking outside the box. Really, by critical thinking, I mean like thinking, being able to critique something, actually critically thinking. Sorry, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like being
yeah.
able to evaluate what somebody's saying to you, because the way we have this is actually interesting. This goes back to the authority, right? The way we have things set up is basically of course, we start with our parents, right? And naturally, we just trust what they say. It's an evolutionary
Hmm.
thing. Without that, we would die. We absorb a lot of information from our parents. We learn from them, right? And we basically trust them and trust what they say to us. Then next, we have similar figures in our teachers, right? So we absorb that information, and at what point do we critically think? We have to be taught that. It has to be facilitated. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
At least in most people. So um, that early
Well, I
on,
think that's when the student interaction comes in. That's when we
exactly.
uh, try to assess perhaps the subjectivity of the teacher, the subjectivity not necessarily the teacher, but what was being taught. Try to assess how valid it might be, and see things objectively. See it as from the outside perspective. not as just a student who listens to what is being told.
I agree.
So, on that note, I think what I just said relates greatly to our viewers. Is that our viewers should also take things out from an outside perspective. So, if you heard something that you don't agree with, or something you agree with heavily, go ahead and comment. Try to start some discussion. We of course don't mind at all. We encourage it. But we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope that you do come back for the next episode. Thank you for listening.
Definitely like, subscribe, comment, and do the same thing for Friendly Bookshelf on Instagram.
Absolutely.